Hello everyone, I'm Heather and this is Heather Travels, where I make videos about every aspect of the travel experience to help you be a better traveler. If that's something that interests you, please be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. One of the things that can stop people from traveling as much as they like, or even at all, is that they are afraid, or probably more accurately, just a little overwhelmed by the idea of flying for the first time, and especially flying by themselves. So this video is going to focus on the experience of flying by yourself on your own, flying solo, for the very first time. We're going to walk you through the entire process so that you feel better prepared to fly by yourself for the first time. I'm going to be dividing this video into 3 parts: before you get to the airport, getting to the airport, and at the airport. And then I'm going to further subdivide the last part, at the airport, into 3 parts: before you go through security, getting through security, and after you're through security. Because it really is divided into those 3 things when you're at the airport. Okay, first of all, before you go to the airport, the main things that you need to think about before you go to the airport, I have made videos about in the past. And there's an abundance of videos about things before you go to the airport made by other excellent YouTube creators in the travel field that you can find elsewhere on YouTube. So I'm not going to focus on this part too much. The main things before you go to the airport would be obviously booking your flight. Now, you may not be doing that alone. You may get the help of a travel advisor or a family member or a friend. Somebody might have helped you book your flight, hopefully. One thing to know is that if you didn't choose your seat, the airline would have assigned a seat to you automatically. Please note, you never have to pay for a seat on an airplane unless you choose to. When you book a flight, it might make it look like you have to pay to choose your seat, but you don't. You can just opt to not choose a seat and the airline will assign you a seat. When you buy a ticket, you're going to get a seat. It just might not be where you want. So booking your flight is one thing you have to do, obviously days, weeks, or months before you take the flight. The other 3 things that I think are important to remember before you go to the airport, one is packing, and that's going to be completely dependent on where you're going, what the weather's like, and your own personal preferences as to what you pack to bring with you. Just remember that airlines are really cracking down now on carry-on luggage. If you choose to go carry-on only, you can only have like your little roller bag or your small suitcase and one other thing that goes under the seat in front of you. They're not going to let you take a suitcase, a backpack, and a purse. You have to have only 2. If you don't have a little roller bag and you checked your bag, you can still have 2. So then you could have a little roller bag and another bag, or you could have a backpack and a purse or whatever, but they're going to limit you to 2 things. Then the next thing would be that you have your money all squared away. Make sure you know how you're going to pay for things. What credit cards are you going to use? Do you need to have cash with you? Get all that stuff squared away ahead of time so you know exactly how much money you need, that type of thing, and that you have it with you. And then the last thing before you go to the airport to remember that's really important is to make sure you have your travel documents ready. Currently, if you're flying domestically within the United States, you still can get by with any state-issued photo ID, like a state ID or a driver's license. That's not a real ID. It's been put off several times, but as of, I think it's May 2025, everyone must have a real ID, even to travel domestically within the United States. This is something you're going to get through the Department of Motor Vehicles. You're going to have to provide additional documentation to show that you're a U.S. citizen and U.S. resident. And you can find those things on the website for your state's Department of Motor Vehicles. It's really a good idea, if you can get one now, if you don't already have one, to try to get a real ID before you fly, because the TSA agents really are expecting it. They're expecting that everybody's going to have that at this point, because you've had plenty of time. It's been years that they've been telling people to get them. If you don't have a real ID, or you're traveling internationally, then you need to have a U.S. passport if you're a U.S. citizen, or a passport from your own country. Even if you're traveling domestically and it's after that date and you haven't gotten a real ID yet, then you're going to need your passport. I strongly encourage everyone to get a passport. My kids have had passports since they were babies. If you're going to be traveling internationally, like as a college student or something, obviously you've got to have a passport. So I would really encourage you to get a passport as early as possible and always keep it up to date. Remember that most countries expect your passport to have at least 6 months of validity left on it when you take that trip or when you're going to be coming home. So there needs to be 6 months left before your passport expires after the date that you're going to return to your home country. I have made an entire video about passports, which I will link up above. It can be complicated for kids. Now, this certainly isn't the case for everyone, but in most circumstances, the first time you'll be flying by yourself is probably going to be when you're a late teen or young adult in your 20s. That just seems to be about the time that people end up flying by themselves. Prior to that, if you were flying by yourself up until about age 14, 15, 16, depending on the airline and their rules about unaccompanied minors, you would have flown either with someone else like your family or a parent, or you would have flown as an unaccompanied minor on an aircraft. Now, none of my kids has actually ever flown as an unaccompanied minor. They were always with family members, and I was always with family when I flew when I was younger. And so we can't really speak to the experience of flying as an unaccompanied minor. Your next step is that you need to determine how you're getting to the airport. Depending on where you live and what your airport is like and what options you have around you, there's a few options that you have for getting to the airport. One option is to drive to the airport yourself. If you choose to drive yourself to the airport and park at the airport, I would strongly recommend that you prepay for your parking and book your parking ahead of time if your airport has this option. One would be to take public transportation. Here at our home airport in Minneapolis, we have a couple options there. There are city buses in Minneapolis here. They go to the first floor or the main level, the ground level of the silver ramp, which we've shown you in past videos. That's also where the bus goes that takes my daughter Megan from her college to the airport. That's where the city buses let off to, and the airline crew buses. The other option that we have for public transportation here in Minneapolis is the light rail. You can take the light rail from a large number of places in St. Paul and Minneapolis to the airport. It goes to both Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. So you're just going to have to investigate the public transportation options for your particular airport. Another very popular option would be to take an Uber or Lyft or taxi. Keep in mind that these days Ubers and Lyft may have to drop off in a completely separate location from where taxis drop off, depending on your city. The other thing a lot of people will do when they're traveling on their own, they will have someone give them a ride to the airport. Ben and I are going to head to the airport now, and we'll show you what that looks like for our airport here in Minneapolis. As we drive into the airport here, I do want to mention that having someone drop me off or pick me up, though it's a very popular option for many people, is my least favorite way of getting to and from the airport, especially if they do what we kind of show you here, which is to just drop you off at the curb outside of the terminal. That area, depending on the time of day and how busy the airport is, can be extremely busy and chaotic. One time we waited an extremely long time for my son Andrew to pick us up here at the Minneapolis airport in the arrivals area. You'll notice that sign says arrivals and departures. That's because one tip that people sometimes give is to go in the opposite one. So if you're dropping someone off, actually go to arrivals, or if you're picking someone up, go to departures instead of the other way around like you would think it is, because sometimes the other one might be less busy. Arrivals tends to be very, very busy, and if you're picking someone up at the airport, I actually think it makes a lot more sense, and this is what I do, to park the car in short-term parking, go inside the airport, and arrange to meet your person like at baggage claim, whether or not they have a bag to pick up. But here you can see we went up. Usually departures is above and arrivals will be below, because normally the baggage claim is at the bottom level. And you can see there's circular signs here that indicate the airline. But see, there's a lot of people pulling in and out. You have to be really watchful when you're driving in this area, people stopping suddenly, trying to get over to the curb. it can be kind of a mess. I don't like this at all. So this is people dropping people off at the airport. You'll also notice when we get up closer here to Delta, there's some sky caps waiting there where you can check and drop off your bags right at the curb, like right there. But this can be kind of stressful to be dropped off this way because you feel like you have to hurry. Because like, see how many cars, it can be difficult to get over to the curb. People will be pulling in and out, stopping like this car in front of us. It can be difficult to find a spot. It's just not my preferred way to do it. But I think this is where taxis, actual legitimate taxis, would be dropping you off too. All right, this is the entrance to the short-term and long-term parking ramps at Minneapolis, which I didn't get to show you in a previous video because it was closed, supposedly full. You go into any one of the lanes that says they're open, and you can either put in a debit or credit card, and it just remembers your card, or you'll have a QR code if you booked for long-term parking in advance, which is what I'm usually doing. But here we were just showing you short-term parking, and so I put in a credit card. It remembered my card, spits the card right out back to me. I take it, and then the gate opens and I go in. It cost us $5 for the short time that we were here. I think $5 is the minimum that it'll charge you for short-term parking. And here you can see how many spots are available in each ramp. So the blue and green ramp is like on one side and the red and gold is the other side, or red and yellow. And it shows you on each level how many spaces are left. Now I went to the right because that was where it indicated hourly parking. So I'm only going to the airport for a short time to pick someone up or drop someone off or do something in the airport that isn't going to take me very long. I'm not going to be there longer than a day. I'm not going to be there overnight. And Ben did see that there was a sign somewhere that said it was like a maximum of 4 hours that you could park in the hourly parking. So we went up here for the hourly parking, and there was also a red sign back there, if you noticed, that a certain level had electric charging on it for electric cars. And we just went right here to the gold 3 hourly parking. It was very busy. The other thing that was difficult was there were a lot of big pickup trucks. That's a Wisconsin thing, Minnesota thing, with big hitches sticking out on both sides. There were some places it was really narrow and difficult to get through because of those big trucks. So you got to be careful when you're going through a parking ramp when it's busy like this because you don't want to hit anything. And so because I have a disabled parking permit, I was going all the way closest to the building that I could get and figured there would probably be a disabled spot for me. However, I was wrong. Just after I turned left here, I was hesitating. There's where the doors into the terminal and the elevators are, and all of the disabled spots were taken. So that's something to be aware of. That can happen. You might have to check multiple levels. We ended up finding a spot just a little ways ahead here.
All right, so now you're at the airport. No matter how you arrived at the airport, you need to make your way to the departures area. So no matter what airport you're at, it's going to be called something like departures. That's where you need to get to, and I'll show you that in a minute. There's basically 2 things that you need to take care of at the airport before you go through security. One is checking in for your flight, checking yourself in. Now you could have done this up to 24 hours ahead of time in your airline's app on your phone or on their website from home. That's something you can actually take care of before you get to the airport. I do strongly suggest checking in as early as you're able to for your flight. If you can do it from home, you should, because airlines often overbook these days and many flights are full. And if someone's going to get bumped, it's going to be somebody who did not check in online ahead of time. The second thing that you're going to need to do at the airport before security is if you plan on checking any luggage, you need to check your bag. And there's a couple steps to this. And again, it will depend on your airline and your airport, but we'll show you that. So there's 2 things you need to make sure you do before you get to security. Check your bag and check yourself in for your flight.
Okay, this is the departures and ticketing area at Minneapolis Airport. We have a nice overview from up here. We just came across the Skyway from the short-term parking ramp. And so you can see there's a lot of different airlines down that way: United, Air Canada, Spirit, American. And then this whole half down here is Delta. And then you see there's one security thing on that side, and there's another security way down there on that end. Now, Delta is the main airline here at Minneapolis, and so they have all of these self-service kiosks here. And at these kiosks, you can either print the sticker for your checked bag, or you can print your boarding pass, or just check in for your flight. If you, for some reason, are not able to use the kiosks, then you would want to go over to where it says Agent Assist. You'd have to get in that queue, and someone will help you. And they can also check your bag for you. You can also self-service drop your bag, where it says self-service bag drop right there. That's another option for doing that. So once you're checked in for your flight and you've dropped off any checked baggage that you want to check, then you would proceed to one of the security areas to go through security. Okay, for my first-time flyers who are looking for the next step of going through security, I started filming how to get through security, and it turned into a very long and detailed video that in itself is going to be much longer than I want this video to be. So at this point, I'm going to just show you a little bit of the beginning of that here, and then I'm going to redirect you to the other video that is going to be a lengthy video about how to get through security. Maybe just open that in a new tab or something if you can, and make sure you watch the rest of this video first, and then you can go afterwards and watch the video about how to get through security. So you've checked in for your flight, you have your boarding pass, either in the form of a paper boarding pass or in the form of a QR code, which is on your phone, on your airline's app. And if you're checking any luggage, you've gotten that checked in and dropped off. So now you're ready to go through security. Getting through security can be the most stressful part of the process of getting on a flight. Depending on how long the queue is before you get to the first TSA agent, it's likely going to take less than 5 minutes. Okay, it's not a long process. Even if you get pulled aside for additional screening or something, it's still only going to probably take about 5 minutes. So don't worry like you're going to miss your flight or something. If you did what you should have and allowed enough time at the airport before you got there, 3 things that'll slow you down at the airport and could potentially make you late for your flight depending on how busy the airport is that day. One is if you have to wait in a long line to check in or to check your bag or something because something went wrong with that process, which we've had that happen before. The second slow point is going to be security, potentially, but again, it would only be how long the queue is before you get to the TSA agent. From the time you get to the TSA agent until you're done with security is never going to be very long. That part's very quick. And then the third thing that could slow you down at the airport is how far away is your gate. If you have to traverse a very long distance in the airport, that can take a long time. And if you have like mobility issues or for some reason you're walking slower, you might want to check to see if they have services like a little cart that they can take you there or something faster, or maybe request a wheelchair even, because if you can't quickly get to your gate, you could potentially miss your flight. Remember that the time of your flight on your ticket or your boarding pass is the time that the flight takes off. So you need to be at the gate a good long time before that. There should be a boarding time on your boarding pass too, and it'll usually be 30 to 45 minutes before the actual flight time. That's when you need to be at the gate by. You need to be there by that boarding time before that, because that's when they're going to start boarding the plane. And the apps for most airlines will show where they're at in the boarding process in case you're not at the gate at that moment. But be careful because sometimes the boarding process on the app is a little delayed from what's actually happening at the gate. That's why I personally, even if I had access to an airport lounge, first of all, I don't want to be at the airport for such a long time that I would even have time to need to be in a lounge. But I don't feel comfortable not being at the gate. I want to be at the gate to be able to see what's happening and make sure they didn't change the gate or they didn't start boarding early. Because if everybody's checked in, they'll go. If everybody's checked in for the flight, you know, they'll start boarding. And if everybody is on the plane, they'll leave early if they can. They love doing that. That's why I just really prefer to be at the gate where I can see what's happening and I can hear the announcements, because it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to hear the gate announcements unless you're physically at the gate.
Once you get through security, basically your goal is to find your gate. And gates look like this. It's a bunch of people sitting in seats. There's going to be a number, a letter and a number maybe, by the door where we will get on the jetway to walk to the plane. The plane is out there. And so you're going to walk down that jetway and get in the airplane. Okay? The gate agent over there is there to help you if you have any questions or concerns or anything, and they're also the people who are going to check you in. They're also going to make announcements like she's doing now.
When customers who are able to take a digital flight in exchange for a selection
Oh
of
dear.
income.
Our flight is overbooked and they're looking for people to volunteer to be bumped, and they are offering money now. If that ever happens to you, hold out for more money because they'll keep going up. They'll keep raising the amount of money until they get enough people. So that can happen. But we need to get there, so we're not going to give up our seats. No. Every airport's obviously going to be different. This is one of the little complimentary carts I talked about where they'll give you like a ride if you need a ride to your gate. Like they're doing there, they can fit 4 or 5 people on that. There's going to be restrooms, you're going to have shops, restaurants. All of this stuff is going to be after security. Basically, an airport is usually kind of like a big mall. It's going to have shops and restaurants and bathrooms and places to eat and maybe some services and stuff. And you can use all of that. We have a little shuttle thing that goes by there to get people to the far end of the concourse. There might be something like that. There might be moving sidewalks like you see people getting on over there. But basically, once you get close to the boarding time for your flight, you want to stay close to your gate and listen to the announcements and make sure you don't miss something important that you need to know, or you don't miss your flight, because they will start boarding and they'll board in groups, and every airline does it a little differently. On Delta, they now do it by number: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're in group 6, so you listen for your group to be called, and then you go up there, they scan your boarding pass, and you get on the plane. From about an hour before your flight on, you really do want to be close to the gate, because they'll try to start boarding about 45 minutes before the flight usually.
Hi everyone. Okay, we're at our hotel now in Massachusetts, and we've already taken our flight. So I'm hoping that you kind of understand past security. I'm sorry that I really didn't have time to show you much past security because we were kind of tight for time. And our airport is under construction and things didn't look the way they normally do. So, but basically once you're past security, you just need to follow the signs to your gate. And it's usually a letter and a number. You know, ours was C7. When we got here to Boston, we got off at A14. So it'll almost always be something like that, a letter and then a number at any airport you go to, at least in the United States. And then once you're at your gate, you just kind of wait there until it's time to get on your plane. And you do need to pay close attention to the announcements and the app and the signage at the gate to make sure that you don't, like wander off. But if you have plenty of time, you can go eat, you can go shop in the shops. If you have a long layover or something, you can, use the restroom. There's lots of things to do and look at and places to eat in airports. Even small airports will have restaurants and stuff. But just make sure that you're back at your gate well before the time your plane is supposed to take off. It does say that they will close the door. I think it's 15 minutes. Sometimes it might even be 30 before your takeoff time, and you can't get on the plane after that. So you really have to pay attention to your boarding time and make sure you're at the gate in time for boarding. Once you're on the plane, because I realize that can be scary too, the only thing you have to do is find your seat. It's the same thing. It's going to be a row number and then a letter. A is next to the window in every plane, I'm sure. And then depending on the seat configuration, then it'll be like A, B, C, D, E, F is a lot of planes. There's 3 on one side of the aisle and 3 on the other. Sometimes there'll be 3 and 2 or 4 and 1 or something like that. But you just find your row and then find your seat, sit down, sanitize things if you want to, like we always do with wet wipes. They were giving wet wipes away on the planes during the pandemic, but they've stopped doing that now. They will come around, at least Delta does, with free earbuds if you want to listen to something if you didn't bring your own headphones. I would highly suggest if you're on a flight that has in-flight entertainment screens like Delta does on all their planes, well, most of their planes, that you bring some headphones with you so you can watch a movie, or there's TV shows on there, there's games you can play, watch the flight tracker on the screen. Eventually they'll come around with either a snack service or a meal service or drink service or something if the flight is long enough. Then they come around 650,000 times to collect your trash. So there really is no excuse for not giving them your trash. You should not be leaving any trash at your seat. You should be giving the flight attendants your trash because they come around plenty of times to take your trash from you. So, and then when you land, it's kind of the same thing in reverse. You just follow the signs in the airport to baggage claim if you checked a bag, or if you didn't, you know, you just have your bag with you. You're going to look for something like ground transportation or hotel shuttles, or to meet your person who's picking you up or whatever it is. You just kind of want to make your way to that place and get to where you're going. And Megan and I are actually going to talk more about that, what happens when you get to the next airport after you've taken a flight, in the next video. So stay tuned for that. If you like travel content like this, please be sure that you've subscribed to the channel. And have a great day, everyone. Safe travels.